In the 1980s, hard times had come my way. I was going through a divorce and I had recently lost my job. I only had a couple of $100 to my name and no place to stay. I decided for the time being I would camp out on some public land until I was able to figure out a better long-term solution. Before heading out, I stopped at Walmart to pick up some supplies with the little bit of money I had. I purchased a tarp, a wool blanket, some rice, beans, tea, flour, and other various supplies I would need. I also decided to pick up an air rifle, a Crosman 2100 to be exact, along with a tin of pellets and a container of 6,000 BBs. I figured with my money situation being tight, and most of it going towards fuel as I continued to look for another job, I would possibly be able to bag some small game and help supply me with food. It turns out the purchase of this air rifle was one of the most important I had made. For the first couple of weeks, I camped out near a small spring. I believe this was the only water source around for miles. Every morning and evening this area would be frequented by all of the game in the area, doves, quail, rabbits, and so on. While plinking with my air rifle the first evening, a group of birds started to make their way towards the water. I began to move slowly towards the watering hole, and once I got there I positioned myself and waited to ambush for their arrival. They finally made their way to the watering hole and out into the open. I was able to pick 2 of them off with only 6 pumps of power. This makes the air rifle much quieter. That night the feast was on, and from that point my air rifle was in my hand everywhere I went. Over the summer months it became my standard operating procedure to scout an area for small game, while out checking various snares and deadfalls I had set up. I had begun put at least 70% of the meat on the spit in my fire throughout the summer months. Eventually I was able to secure a job and leave living off the public land. My rifle was indispensable to me that summer and proved to be a valuable tool during my shit hit the fan scenario. For those out there who want to plan ahead for hard times, I wanted to leave you with this information about my time with my air rifle. Number 1, reliability. It had never failed me and went through half of my 6,000 BBs in that container at an average of 6 pumps per shot. That comes out to about 18,000 pumps. I was sure to oil my seals at least once a week. This gun now has over 70,000 rounds in it and it still performs flawlessly. Number 2, accuracy. What I found is after about 500 shots or so, I was no longer consciously using my sights within 25 yards, and that's where about 90% of the critters were bagged. Number 3, handling. This is the area where the rifle really shined. Weighing in at under 5 pounds loaded with a couple of hundred BBs, it was a joy to tote around. The way this gun is designed, it became a second nature to pump it. Number 4, critter bagability. Please note that you should read your state laws before hunting with this air rifle. I was in a desperate time, and desperate times call for desperate measures. If you are in a shit hit the fan scenario or an end of the world as we know it situation, that all goes out the window. With that said, turkeys at 25 yards, 10 pumps and headshots. Raccoons and skunks, 10 pumps, 10 yards, headshots. Squirrels cleanly at 25 yards with a headshot and 10 pumps. The rifle really shines for birds. 5 to 6 pumps, having the variable power is very nice and much quieter. I was also able to bag some large lizards and some big grasshoppers with 3 to 4 pumps. The BBs do almost no damage to the meat either, regardless of where it's hit. Number 5, stealth. Many times I hunted near primitive campgrounds without raising an eyebrow, and most often, if you missed your first shot, you can usually get in a second. Number 6, tactical training. After returning to the field and switching back to my AR-15s and my 10-22s, I noticed that my shooting skills had become quite honed. Everything from bringing my weapon up to my shoulder, to breathing and trigger control, and having an instinctive sight picture was ingrained in my memory. If you want advice on an air rifle that is right for you, here is my opinion. In a survival situation, I would not want a single-stroke type of air rifle for several reasons. They include excessive power and report, excessive weight, their limitations to pellets only, I mostly shot BBs, which are much cheaper and easily available. I only use pellets for larger game. Also, I am not sure how one would service this type of air rifle in the field. CO2-powered air rifles are a no-go because of their need for CO2 cartridges. I think a good pump air rifle is the best option in my opinion for practical long-term survival in the field. I like my Crosman 2100, but I also like the Daisy 880. I keep an extra set of sills in the buttstock of the gun in case they ever wear out. There are a couple cons to note though, the first being that the higher your altitude or the colder your temperature, the more pumps you may be required to get up to the same velocity. Example, my gun required 2 extra pumps in the morning to make up the difference as opposed to shooting in the midsummer day. Take your time and learn your gun's quirks. Some general information about ammo. BBs were my preferred ammo due to cost and availability. With BBs I can shoot a 1-inch group at 25 yards, but that's with shooting on a daily basis. Pellets would give me much more accuracy, especially out to 50 yards, and the penetration would be much greater, which is required for the bigger game. Magnums are my preferred pellet. I was able to bag several jackrabbits with headshots out to 50 yards. It's also worth mentioning that the general public and local law enforcement officers pay almost no attention to an individual with a BB gun.